The Korean War, often overshadowed by the global scale of World War II and the dramatic tensions of the Vietnam War, remains a crucial conflict in modern history. Dubbed the Forgotten War, it lasted from 1950 to 1953 and was marked by its ferocity, political complexity, and significant implications for the Cold War era. This analysis aims to shed light on the intricate dynamics of the Korean War, exploring its causes, unfolding, and lasting impacts on Korea and the world. The Korean War, which erupted in 1950, was not an isolated event, but a culmination of simmering tensions influenced by historical, political, and ideological factors. To understand the root causes of this conflict, it's essential to consider various dimensions. Historical context. Korea's history of foreign domination played a significant role in shaping its 20th century trajectory. Following over 3 decades under Japanese colonial rule, Korea emerged from World War II divided along the 38th parallel. This division was initially intended as a temporary measure, but soon solidified into a permanent split. The North, supported by the Soviet Union, established a communist government, while the South, backed by the United States, formed a capitalist regime. This division reflected not just a geographical separation, but a deep ideological chasm, setting the stage for future conflict. International tensions and the Cold War. The Korean War must also be viewed within the broader context of the Cold War. The ideological struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union for global dominance turned Korea into a proxy battleground. The North's aggressive push to unify the peninsula under communism was seen by the United States and its allies as part of a larger Soviet plan to spread communism worldwide. In contrast, the Soviet Union viewed the US involvement in Korea as an extension of capitalist and imperialist ambitions. Internal political dynamics in Korea. The leaders of North and South Korea, Kim Il-sung and Syngman Rhee, respectively, were both nationalists with a strong desire to unify Korea under their own systems of governance. This ambition was fueled by their respective ideologies and backed by their powerful allies. The mutual distrust and provocative actions by both governments escalated tensions on the peninsula. Failure of diplomacy. Despite various efforts, diplomatic solutions to peacefully reunite Korea failed. The division hardened, with both North and South Korea increasing their military capabilities. The absence of a formal peace treaty after World War II and the failure of the United Nations to effectively address the Korean question left a volatile situation ripe for conflict. Trigger event. The immediate cause of the war was the North Korean Army's invasion of South Korea on June 25, 1950. This act was a strategic decision by Kim Il-sung, who believed that a rapid military strike could lead to a quick reunification of Korea under communist rule. The invasion was a gamble, banking on the assumption that the United States would not intervene. However, this miscalculation led to a massive international conflict when the United Nations, led by the United States, stepped in to support South Korea. In summary, the causes of the Korean War were deeply rooted in the historical experiences of the Korean Peninsula, amplified by the geopolitical struggles of the Cold War era, and ignited by the ambitions and actions of the Korean leaders. The conflict reflected not just a local desire for reunification, but also the global ideological struggle between communism and capitalism. The Korean War, lasting from 1950 to 1953, was marked by a series of dramatic shifts in fortune and brutal combat that left a lasting impact on the Korean Peninsula and the wider world. Its course can be divided into several key phases. Initial invasion and Pusan perimeter, June-September 1950. The war began with a surprise attack by North Korean forces across the 38th parallel, quickly overwhelming South Korean and US troops. The North's Soviet-equipped army captured Seoul within days. United Nations forces, primarily from the United States, rallied to South Korea's defense, forming a defensive line around the Pusan perimeter in the southeast corner of the peninsula. This period was characterized by desperate fighting as UN forces struggled to hold back the North Korean advance. Incheon landing and push north, September-November 1950. A turning point came with General Douglas MacArthur's amphibious landing at Incheon, which successfully cut off North Korean supply lines. This bold maneuver allowed UN forces to break out of the Pusan perimeter and rapidly advance north, recapturing Seoul and pushing the North Korean army back across the 38th parallel. UN forces then moved into North Korea, nearing the Chinese border. Chinese intervention, November 1950 – January 1951. As UN forces approached the Yalu River, Chinese troops entered the war in support of North Korea, fearing a US-dominated unified Korea. The Chinese intervention turned the tide again, forcing UN troops into a hasty retreat. Seoul was recaptured by communist forces in January 1951, leading to a renewed struggle for control of the peninsula. Stalemate and peace talks, July 1951 – July 1953. By mid-1951, the war had reached a stalemate, with the front lines stabilizing near the 38th parallel. Both sides dug in, leading to a war of attrition reminiscent of World War I, with trench warfare and little territorial gain. Peace talks began in July 1951 but were protracted and difficult, hampered by disagreements over prisoner exchanges and the exact location of the border. Armistice and aftermath, July 1953. The war effectively ended with the signing of an armistice on July 27, 1953. The agreement established the Korean Demilitarized Zone (DMZ), a heavily fortified border near the 38th parallel. However, a formal peace treaty was never signed, and the two Koreas remain technically at war to this day. Throughout its course, the Korean War was characterized by extreme conditions and intense combat. It saw the first large-scale use of jet-powered fighter aircraft in combat, significant naval operations, and the introduction of new military technology. The conflict had a profound impact on the civilian population, resulting in significant casualties and widespread destruction. It also set the stage for the prolonged Cold War standoff in Northeast Asia, shaping the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. The Korean War, often referred to as the Forgotten War, had far-reaching consequences that extended beyond the Korean peninsula, impacting global politics, economies, and societies in various ways. Human cost and devastation. The war resulted in immense human suffering, with millions of military and civilian casualties. The extensive bombing and fighting left much of Korea, particularly the north, in ruins. Families were torn apart and many people were displaced, leading to long-term humanitarian challenges. Political and military implications. The war solidified the division of Korea into two separate entities: North Korea, DPRK, and South Korea, ROK, each with distinctly different political and economic systems. It also intensified the Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, leading to an arms race and increased military presence in various parts of the world. Influence on U.S. foreign policy. The Korean War marked a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy towards a more aggressive stance against communism, known as the policy of containment. It led to increased U.S. military involvement in various parts of the world and a commitment to defend allies against communist expansion, as exemplified by the formation of SEATO, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. Economic impact. The war had a substantial economic impact, particularly on the Korean peninsula. South Korea, with aid and support from the United States and other countries, eventually embarked on a path of rapid economic development, transforming into a major global economy. North Korea, on the other hand, pursued a policy of self-reliance, which, combined with economic sanctions, contributed to its relative economic isolation and difficulties. Social and cultural effects. The war had lasting social and cultural impacts, especially in Korea. It fostered a strong sense of national identity and resilience in both North and South Korea, albeit in very different ways. The division of the peninsula continues to affect family relationships and cultural connections between the two Koreas. International relations and geopolitics. The Korean War had significant implications for international relations. It was one of the first major conflicts under the auspices of the United Nations, setting a precedent for future collective security actions. The war also influenced geopolitical dynamics in East Asia, contributing to the strategic importance of the region in global politics. Technological and military innovations. The conflict saw the first significant use of jet aircraft in combat and advancements in military technology. It also led to developments in medical care for wounded soldiers and innovations in military logistics and strategy. Legacy and memory? The Korean War left a complex legacy, often overshadowed by World War II and the Vietnam War. Its memory is preserved through memorials, literature, and films, but the interpretations and perceptions of the war vary widely, reflecting differing national and ideological narratives. Overall, the Korean War was a pivotal event in the 20th century, shaping not only the Korean Peninsula, but also leaving a profound impact on international relations and military strategies during the Cold War era and beyond. The Korean War was not just a regional conflict, but a significant episode in the Cold War era. Its impacts on the Korean Peninsula, the dynamics of international politics, and the evolution of warfare cannot be understated. By revisiting this forgotten war, we gain insights into a pivotal period in world history and the ongoing complexities of international relations and peacekeeping efforts.